What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. I'm one of the hosts of the podcast, Kevin Valentin. And today we are going to be talking about breaking news earlier today. LeBron James has signed a 2-year extension with the Los Angeles Lakers worth up to $97 million. Kyle, our resident Laker fan, is going to give us his honest opinion on his thoughts to what does this extension mean for the Lakers. So, Kyle, the floor is yours.
Well, let me get the positives out of the way first. I mean, LeBron's going to probably retire as a Laker. That's pretty much it. That pretty much guarantees that he's probably going to ride the rest of his career with the Lakers. Now let's actually get into the real conversation here. The Lakers better make the most of this 2-year extension with LeBron. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think this is a terrible decision, short term and long term. Because the way that I see it is that, granted, I know LeBron is coming off of a year where he averaged 30 points a game. And everybody will look to that one stat and they will say, oh, well, even despite the fact that he's 38 years old, he's still going out there and producing at a high clip. Well, let's be realistic about this. I watched the Lakers from beginning to end last year, and the Lakers were in no way, shape, or form competitive for any sort of playoff spot in the Western Conference, despite LeBron James going out there and scoring 30 points a game. There were multiple games where LeBron was on the court and the Lakers were getting smoked by 30 points. And that wasn't just like a one-time thing. That was multiple times throughout the season. And that was despite the fact that they had Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis at times alongside with him. And the same result occurred. So you could even make the point that a lot of the points that LeBron was scoring were pretty much garbage time points when the Lakers as a whole were down 20, 25, 30 points. So I understand LeBron was still effective when it looks at just statistics. But as far as I'm concerned, the team was not viable in any way, shape, or form last year. Now going into this year, LeBron's going to turn 39 years old in December. And this is not LeBron at 29 years old anymore. When I look at LeBron the last couple of years with the Lakers, he has not been available as much as I think the Lakers originally anticipated. And it's simply just because that LeBron is getting older and his body is starting to break down. I understand that LeBron has put millions upon millions of dollars to be able to maintain his body, and that's no small effort as far as I'm concerned. But as far as I see it, Father Time is eventually going to win, and it's starting to finally chip away at LeBron James. And LeBron has done, I would say, a pretty solid job to stave off Father Time to this point. But when I look at the last couple of years, injuries have been a factor. Last year, he only played 56 games. Throughout his entire tenure with the Lakers, he has not played a full season, and that's even despite the one year that was shortened by COVID. That was probably the only year where it looked like he was probably going to play a full season with the Lakers. But as time goes on, I can't bank on LeBron being a force for the Lakers just because I think that injuries are going to pop up too frequently, despite whatever sort of contract money that he's going to get with this new extension. And the way that I see it is, LeBron's going to make $45 to $50 million a year on this extension. And then you tie that into the fact that 80 is still probably going to be under contract. I mean, we'll see what happens with Russell Westbrook. I don't really foresee Russell staying on this team past this season, but who knows? It's the Lakers. Anything could happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if Russell stays long term as well. You look at LeBron James, he's going to be eating almost probably 30 to 35% of the upcoming cap, not this season, but next year. And despite that, I just don't see the Lakers being that viable of a team, just because I think the Lakers are expecting too much of LeBron, who's at this point, let's just be frank about it, old. And when you look at the entire Western Conference, I mean, the West is stacked. When you look at the West from top to bottom, I mean, Golden State's coming off of a championship year. The Grizzlies are on the rise with Ja Morant. The Suns are a competitive force despite the fact that they've had some misses in the playoffs the last couple of years. The Denver Nuggets have Nikola Jokic, probably the best player in the NBA, just as far as the MVP is concerned, the last 2 seasons. They also get Jamal Murray back from his torn ACL as well. And you could look at a multitude of teams that are on the rise. You could look to the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic. I mean, there's a boatload of teams that you have to consider that are going to be competitive forces in the Western Conference. And I don't necessarily think the Lakers are in that mix just because LeBron, I don't think is going to be healthy. I think LeBron's going to go through some injury issues. I think AD will kind of go through the same thing as well. Russell might be the only one that stays on the team consistently, barring sort of any injury. But I can't bank on him being effective. There were multiple times where I thought Russell Westbrook looked god awful with the Lakers last year, and I think that that could actually be the same thing going into this year. But I mean, just to kind of wrap this up, the Lakers are in a tricky situation here. I was of the mindset that the Lakers should have contemplated trading LeBron James and to just basically blow this whole thing up and start from scratch and start building for the future, because whatever they think that they're going to get out of LeBron, AD, and Russell Westbrook, if they think that that's going to lead them to a viable place in the Western Conference, they're fooling themselves. And I think this is just one of those things where they've doubled down with this contract extension with LeBron, and I think it's going to turn out to be a tire fire in the end.